This is the final word, Ashes Daily. We've been waiting for months to say that. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins, day one, the first test at Edgbaston. The show brought to you by Westfield, London, and Westfield, Stratford City, more extra, less ordinary. And well, it was both extra and ordinary if you put those words together, day to day at Edgbaston. Adam, please sum up the entire day in 30 seconds.
It was more extra, less ordinary. Australia were able to bowl first, which I didn't expect. England elected to bat first, not the Bazball thing, but it didn't matter. They went out of the blocks in style. Crawley, boundary, first ball of the innings, first ball of the series, but they lose 3 in the first session. They keep the foot down in the middle stanza, largely due to Joe Root and Jonny Bairstow after losing a couple of wickets, including a freak wicket of Harry Brook with the ball that bounced over his head and landed on the stumps. After tea, Bairstow put the foot down, 78 off 78, before Root ended up completing his 30th Test century, 118 not out. Stokes declares after 78 overs at 393 for 8. They have 4 overs at Australia tonight. Broad versus Warner doesn't quite work, but what a day! What a day!
Fun day. A lot happened in that day. It was a day when I felt like England blinked with the Bazball thing. Like if you're really sticking to your principles, I mean, A, you've got to pick a nutso pick for your spinner, like somebody super wild at number 8, you know, like they did in Pakistan. And B, you've got to bat last. That's the whole thing. That's your whole deal. That's your whole shtick. That's your raison d'etre. That's your all of it is about batting second and then batting fourth and chasing 400 in the last innings. That's what they wanted to do, and instead they went, no, we'll bat first. What's that about?
I get your point, and that's how I was thinking this morning, but you couldn't justify bowling first on that. So I think it was a conditions-based decision. I mean,
Right.
That was just the flattest track we could have imagined. I mean, you know, if you have a scale of 1 to 10 on how flat we thought it was going to be yesterday, that was at 10.
But it wasn't a batting belter.
But it wasn't a batting belter flat. It was
Yeah.
a slow flat. It was balls not carrying through to Alex
belter Goodrum,
Carey.
if you will.
Indeed, it was balls not carrying through to Alex Carey, barely any.
Yeah.
In that first spell from Hazlewood and Cummins, so many balls landed in front of him. The lack of lateral movement. CricViz assessed that it was the least lateral movement that any side's got in the first hour of a test match in England in their database history in England, going back to 2006. So it is an outlier. So I know some people will get angry about criticising pitches because 8 wickets were taken at Great Day Cricket. It's not so much that, it's just telling the truth that the surface was turgid, and the fact that Australia were able to take 8 wickets reflects the way England are playing to an extent, but the fact that they pretty much stuck to it and created just enough opportunities, and well, they still got declared on. That's a different story, but I mean, they didn't throw in the towel at any point either.
Yeah, and they were a couple of times they were allowed to create opportunities by the way England were playing.
Exactly,
Ben Duckett, the classically Ben Duckett thing, sort of goes at a ball he doesn't need to. The whole thing about the fact that he never leaves the ball, well, could have left that one.
That was so well set up, by the way. I mean, even disregarding the wicket-taking delivery, Hazlewood, we talked about it after the Ireland Test match. How would Australia bowl to Duckett? Well, kind of how you thought it would, in as far as bowling at their stumps, and then the wide one, then the tempter, the ball he has to leave alone 95 times out of 100 in the first session, doesn't want to, gets nicked off.
Sort of little angled bat as well, kind of dabs at it. He's a bit cramped for room in terms of it's not really wide enough to get the arms through, gets that little edge. They're away at that point. That's only the 4th over. So England have gone at 6 and over for the first 3, wicket in the 4th over, and then suddenly Pope's to the crease, and he looked $1 million for a while.
Well, they both did. He and Crawley together. I mean, Crawley was 40 or 40 or something like that, and look, it did prompt a change in strategy. Bearing in mind, Pat had a deep backward point out on the rope from the first ball, but the way in which the Australian fielders were marshalled, they had 3 back and then 4 back inside the first half an hour. Nathan Lyon was bowling well inside the first hour of play, which you wouldn't have expected either.
He was bowling in the 10th over.
10th over,
now,
right.
do you want to know something wild?
Raw Kindy, something related?
No. Cardiff, 2015. He bowled in the 10th over of the Ashes in the first test when Michael Clarke was captain. He brought Nathan Lyon on. So Cummins was operating in Clarke levels of funkiness. I don't know if there'll be any December 17 sort of situations with Pat Cummins in future. Doesn't seem like the kind of cat.
No, not really.
But you never know. You never know how things will pan out after a captaincy career is done. I'm just saying that there's a little bit of overlap there because Clarke liked that kind of thing. And you know what happened in that test match? Nathan Lyon got Alistair Cook out. 2nd over he was bowling, I think, on the cut shot. And, well, he didn't get a wicket quite so quickly here, but he did get a wicket in that first session because he gets Pope. And it's the classic Lyon set up around the wicket, straightening down, and just kept a little bit low. The surface, it felt to me like it was subcontinental areas, not in terms of the turning ones, but the subcontinental flat ones, where it doesn't mean you can just smash through the line of the ball. It's not like it's an absolute delight to bat on. It's hard to get out on if you're not being aggressive, but there are those ones that keep low and the occasional one that bounces a little more.
We said it last week, hitting across the line when Lyon's bowling from round the wicket as a right-hander is a challenging thing. Rohit Sharma found out the hard way in the second innings at the Oval last week. So, or maybe it was the first thing, I can't remember anymore. It was last weekend at the Oval when they won the World Test Championship final. It was then, sometime. But yeah, the point is that Lyon is the kind of guy you can throw the ball to. He's the man for all seasons for Pat Cummins. He can be trusted in circumstances like that. Taking 4 today on the first day of the series.
Bowling how many overs do you bowl? 28?
Shitload. I mean, the fact that there were only 2 maidens bowled in the whole day, which is probably Hall of Fame worthy later, but we've got so many contenders, speaks to the way that Lyon had to do it differently. He couldn't sort of tie up an end and rotate the quicks. This was, like so many things today, without precedent.
And then Crawley, just before the lunch break, he's batted well, he's got into the 60s, and then it's Scott Boland doing things with a dead pitch. I mean, this is what he's trained for. This is what he spent his decade at the MCG before they relayed the square, trying to extract something from that surface, and he had the same issue today, and he was able to do it today. He gets the ball to kick. How he got the ball to kick, I don't know. There were just a couple. There was that one that seemed wildly and went way down the leg side, and Carey had to dive across to take it from Boland. And there was this one where, it's the bolt upright seam, smashes into the pitch, and it jumps at Crawley, who's startled. He's a tall guy, but he stands up tall and sort of just hangs the bat there and click, through goes the edge.
And he got a life from Boland as well, or rather, they didn't appeal for a ball that he hit and caught behind when he closed the face on one after charging at Boland about 20 runs earlier. So it was fitting reward for. They brought it up on TV retrospectively, that one that he kind of oohed and ahed about.
And Pope charged a few times as well.
Yeah. So I mean, 3 wickets in the first century was an unbelievably good result for Australia in the circumstances.
Yeah,
and
that
when
felt like them on top.
Yeah, and they go bang bang inside the third hour as well, picking up wickets with a score on 175. The Brook dismissal, I suspect we'll come back to that in the Hall of Fame. But 32 from 37 and looked, with the exception of the head drop catch and the ball that he gets out to, 35 other balls, top class. And Stokes, who was the very opposite, rusty. I watched Stokes bat in the nets before the Ireland test and looked $1 million. He didn't today and nicks off for 1, with Hazlewood putting in a shift in that middle stretch when they needed someone to dry it up, and that was the only real time in the whole day's play that there was some dot ball pressure, if you could even call it that.
Right. There were little bits from on occasion. Josh Hazlewood bowled really well in that first session.
Yeah.
So he comes back in for Stark, which we haven't mentioned. Good selection in terms of the fact that he bowled well. I suspect that both teams will want at some point their faster bowler and not have them available. But that didn't end up being a problem, I suppose, for Australia. It felt to me broadly like, okay, England were scoring at a pretty good rate, and at that point where they're 5 down, where you'd got up to, that's where Bairstow and Root come together and they score pretty quickly for a while. Bairstow looks like he might ton up at that point, but he gets greedy and he has a big charge at Lyon and misses, gets stumped. Moeen Ali does a similar thing, hits a couple of sixes and then gets himself stumped. But it felt like no matter how quickly England scored today, Australia always had them in control. After the Crawley wicket, I thought Australia are happy with this. And even at the point where Root's batting, with Robinson down at number 10, it's like, okay, well, if Australia get them out for under 400, they'll be very happy with that day's work. They'll be confident that they can go bigger than that. And in the end, they declare for under 400.
Well, this is it. This is the debating point, right? Because Bairstow after tea was absolutely smashing it. There were a couple of overs there when he was down the track, lofting over cover, pulling over mid-wicket, doing things that we saw Bairstow do so effectively last summer when on his roll, and you're thinking, well, he's just picking up from that run. He's playing with the same confidence, the same freedom. Root was accumulating so well. Now Root, I wrote it down somewhere here, he hit only 7 4s and 4 6s. Root didn't hit us 4 after 3:30. Again, that could be Hall of Fame worthy. He hit 4 6s after that. Okay. 2 of them were lap reverse sweep jobbies over the Corden, which he's made an art form of in the last couple of years, or last 12 months rather, and 2 were over Lyon's head before the declaration came. But they were letting Root score exclusively in singles and sixes. But what I'm trying to say is that there was I think they got the plan.
Like a good night out at a cricket nets place.
I think they got the plan wrong for Root. I don't mind. There'll be a lot of criticism of Cummins being too defensive from the usual suspects back in Australia about being a woke whatever. I'm sure that'll come. You can guarantee in the morning when we wake up, those who didn't watch the whole way through will be getting stuck in the Cummins. But for the most part, I think it was fine. Where I think it fell down was that it wasn't the plan for Root, because Root loves scoring singles and milking the strike and playing the game his way. He plays Bazball a different way to the model that's employed by the guys who hit the ball harder and strive to hit boundaries with greater frequency.
I think he's liberated by the Brendan McCullum era. He feels better because of it and he plays better because of it, but he doesn't actually play that sort of kamikaze style that the rest
very
of them
rarely, with the exception of that one shot that he likes to play.
Yeah, but even that is calculated in a way because he plays, one off Boland and one off Cummins, both of them when there's some width outside the off stump, and he's like, okay, well, I can see from the length and the line of that ball that I can get under it and I can deflect it away.
I mean, it is premeditated. If those balls are in swinging Yorkers, he's in strife. But I guess the stock delivery from Boland is outside the off stump. He can hedge a little bit, but he's going to be okay.
Sure. So, I thought, and for Root, it's a breakthrough as well because since 2015 he hasn't made an Ashes 100. So he goes through the 17-18 series where he has a couple of big 50s, but that's as far as he can go. They get absolutely smashed. 2019, 2-all, can't get 100. He made, an 87, I think, in that, and 68 at Headingley, something like that. Off the top of my head, I'm really reaching into the recesses here. And then 21-22 doesn't make 100 in Australia either. I mean, he never has made 100 in Australia, so in Test cricket. Probably hasn't in any format. So, I don't know. It felt important today that at the first attempt in the series, he's able to put those years of history behind him and say, you know what, I am good enough to make hundreds against this team.
He's got a great strike rate of making hundreds on the first day of a summer as well. Joe Root did so in 2015 at Cardiff and has done so again today against Australia. I was thrilled for him, and look, the way he moved to 100, there was no pressure on the single, even on 99. I think that's sort of a subplot of the day that, for the most part, I think that, adapting to this kind of play is not going to be an instantaneous thing. It's going to take them a while to get into this new rhythm. It will take anyone that. Even the very fact that they're out there for 78 overs in effectively one-day conditions, that will take a toll in ways that being out there on a conventional 90-over day wouldn't take quite so much of a toll on the fielders and the boundary riders. And there's all of these other component parts that they're just going to have to get used to. And the fact that they've gotten out of this, having conceded 393, but not having lost a wicket before the close, crucially. Warner hitting that lovely boundary off Broad after nearly getting run out with Khawaja and all the nerves those two experienced in the first 4 overs. But the fact is, they start again tomorrow, and they're off the mark, and that's not for nothing.
Okay, so the declaration bit, you've got Broad at 8, that's a long tail. He gets bowled by Cameron Green, and then Root's batting with Robinson, whacks a couple of sixes when he knows they're about to declare. They put Australia in for 25 minutes, whatever it was at the end. In theory, you can understand it. I felt like it was taking the piss. You've got a guy out there batting so well, and Robinson can bat a bit.
Batting well.
Maybe,
Robinson brought a Moeen all-platter roll today.
This is what maybe if Robinson's there at stumps, maybe he bats for an hour the next morning, maybe you get up to 450. There is a valuable advantage to be taken if you let Root continue to bat.
He would say, if Stokes was here right now, he'd say, I don't care, I want to take 20 wickets, and we've already lost 80. We've already, by virtue of batting first, we've already conceded 80 overs away from our plan. We want to get to the 20 wickets bit, and on this surface they'd be mindful that won't be easy. So there is two ways of looking at this. 393, I mean, there was 407 runs scored. And you know what, why don't we talk about that in a little bit? Why don't we talk about that now as we launch into the Final Word Hall of Fame? The Final Word Hall of Fame is brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. Father's Day in England this week. Let the big man have some fun at Sixers or at Putt Shack or at City Bouldering or the All-Star Lanes.
You know what? He doesn't need to be a big man. What if he's a small man? That's fine as well. I passed City Bouldering the other day. It's a place where you can climb walls, which I can tell you is a lot easier if you're a small man than a big man.
Get him the Corona from Iguanas by. All you need to do is to keep Puppy happy. Free Corona for him there. 600 places to buy soap on a rope or a tie or whatever it is, and the bookshop's there, Waterston's there to get him the cricket biography that he's always wanted. You can buy him a nice tie,
the box.
Nice tie from Charles Tyrwhitt. Many options.
Don't be constrained by convention. Buy him a tiara. Tell him he's your princess. Mix things up a bit.
Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. The link's in the show notes, as we've talked about on previous shows. Can't wait to be working with them throughout the men's Ashes series, the women's as well, at the Test match next week at Nottingham. Your nomination.
Okay, well, let's come back to what you were saying. Were you saying there were 407 runs?
There was 400 runs.
407 runs scored today.
That's a Phil long.
2005.
That's a Phil long. 407 runs. There was 10 wickets, of course, that famous day at Edgbaston. And I'm just going omen, right? I mean, it was going to be Brook's dismissal all day long, and you'll probably speak of that.
Sure.
But the fact that we ended on 407, it feels right.
Yep.
It feels like
Yep.
all of that expectation around the 2005 series. We spoke about it in our preview yesterday. You can never meet that standard, but a day like this, what do they say? It doesn't repeat history, it rhymes.
Well, yeah, there's something beautiful in the assonance and the consonants of history there. Harry Brook, you've got to talk about, thrust the leg forward, ball off the thigh pad. It hangs in the air for so long, he just forgets where it is. He's like, hang on, what's happening? Where's it going? What's this? And everyone...
Alex
up in the
Carey's
press
running
box-
over to Silly Point.
Yeah, and Labuschagne's yelling at Carey to catch the ball because he thinks it might have come off something. Well, it did, but his leg...
Then his bum,
pipe
then his
down,
boot.
pipe down. And then everyone in the press box is just watching because we're behind
Yeah,
the
yeah.
player at this point. We're like, and it just comes down and lands right on top of the bails, like Spedigius dropper, Arthur Conan Doyle stuff. It lands on the middle stump and knocks the bails off. It was one of the more extraordinary bold decisions you could see.
We didn't mention Alex Carey,
results.
actually, and he deserves to be mentioned for that first stumping off Bairstow. That's really important.
Yeah.
And he hasn't made many stumpings in Test cricket. If he misses that, they are 420
And
tonight.
he did
They're
miss the
lighting-
catch. He'd missed the catch
Hard
off
chance.
Bairstow.
Hard chance. Well,
Catchable.
Catchable, but nevertheless, I'm just making the point that Carey holding on to that stumping, and another one later off Moeen, but that was more
Well,
important.
I'm saying it's important because he's already dropped Bairstow.
Sure, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a dive, but he only really dives after he's dropped the catch. He's leaning to the catch. It's one-handed, but it's at a good height for a one-hander, and he slaps it to the ground and then dives across. So it wasn't as hard as it looked.
And that's the Final Word Hall of Fame for Westfield London and Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. That's what this day was as well. If you like what we do, patreon.com/The Final Word. All these episodes are on YouTube as well. I think that's everything. It's everything we could have possibly asked for here at Edgbaston on day one. A pleasure to bring it to you on our podcast, as we will every night of the series.
You had better see us on day 2. Jeff
Ta-da.
Lemon, Adam Collins. Bye.